So there we go. A lot of good stuff going on. Anyone else need anything else to share? Just in case you're in activities that wasn't recognized. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Need to share? Because there has been a lot of good stuff going on, athletic and arts wise, and sometimes because of communication and us being together as a larger group, that gets lost. So there has been a lot of good things occurring even during, type of school year that we are having. All right, so quickly here, we are going to conclude the sources activity, and so we'll start off with that. Then I want to put some finishing touches today on MAU, and just know that tomorrow the assessment on MAU does open up, and it closes on Sunday. So give yourself some time for that to make sure it is, and again, it's a timed assessment. So make sure you are prepped and prepared. And since it is online, have some integrity as you are doing that. I say that, have some integrity, because I have been noticing some similarities in responses. So just have some integrity, and that's something that is something that's constant. All right. Okay. So let's, and then this Friday, we will not have an actual live Google Meet this Friday, but I will have the Google Meet open. So if you do have questions related to the assessment, yes. The schedule tomorrow it's a Flex Friday, so you're going to start off the day. We are going to have an advisory, so you start the day off at 8:35, and that'll go to like 8:55. Excuse me. 9 o'clock is your first hour, and then go accordingly. 9, 10, and 11. All right. All right. Any other questions? All right, let's dig out that sources activity, and let's finish that up here. Let's get some closure. Come on. Of course not. All right. So we left off, and we were working on kind of putting it together. And we're trying to make a claim that Mao's policies had affected the lives of the people of China. And each of these policies in some ways, or each of these sources we're dealing with is economic policies, whether it's the first 5-year plan, the Great Leap Forward, was dealing with maybe some criticism about the Great Leap Forward program, or even the Cultural Revolution. And so we can make that claim when we left, that Mao's policies had a far-reaching impact on the daily lives of the people of China. And the impact can be seen in the economic policies, cultural policies, and the level of control. All right, so now we need to prove that with various sources. All right, and we had more than 4 sources to look at, so we wanna pick 4 good sources that can help your claim, and then bring in some outside info, and then bring it back home, okay? And so when we look at, I'm kind of curious as always, what kind of outside information could you add to this that would show his policies had a far-reaching effect here? And when we say outside information, information that isn't specifically directed in the sources, but are very applicable. What could be an example of one outside information? So if you're at home, you put it in the chat, and I could share it with people here, and those here as well. Outside information that could help his policies have impact on the daily lives of the people of China.
That his food policies led to like a famine.
Okay, so
policies, but like everyone's focused on doing other things, so the crops stay.
So it does make reference to it in that poem about the crops are withering and we're worried about our future, but you're right. The Great Famine could be a good one to put in. All right. Jermaine, were you going to say something? Lost your train of thought. Oh. Too young for that to happen. Yes, the 100 Flowers campaign. All right, that's a good one. And again, it's like when you look at it in hindsight, genius on his part, let people criticize, put their thoughts down on paper in the suggestion box. Now you know who they are, and you get to go after them. That might not have been his full intent, but too much criticism was a little heavy. It's a little heavy. Okay, what else could we put in there? There might be a few other things possible. What do you got? Okay, yes, you could do that. Red Guard influence. Absolutely, that's a good one. I'm going to jot that one down. You know, and that's referencing that cultural revolution and bringing the youth in. Okay? Say that again? Oh, yes, that cult of personality. I'm just going to put deity. All right. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. Any others? Other possibilities that we could put down there as well. It's like the agrarian law of 1950, and then any of you know, the 3 and 5 anti-campaigns. So he had a lot of campaigns, and so I'm referencing also that placard activity that we had done at the end of last week with the 100 Flowers campaign was in there, cult of personality piece, the 3 and the 5 anti-campaigns. And what that will just basically mean is they're going after aspects of Chinese culture, things like bribery and theft of economic secrets, tax evasion, that types of stuff going on with those anti-campaigns. So any of those things show, again, far-reaching effects. Now, if we pulled out some sources here, and let's quickly pull out some sources, what could be a good source that we looked at in this activity that could help us answer this one? Someone give me one. What's that?
Source B.
Why source B?
It talks about like how somebody is worried about how they're going to feed people because they've stripped away from the agriculture to be able to iron.
Yes. So with that, the criticism and fear. Okay. Okay. I had just noticed in the chat someone down here in terms of outside information being brought in here, as well as just the general concept of fear and punishment. They like to always call that self-criticism. Self-criticism. Right? And usually that self-criticism or that fear and punishment, if all of a sudden you're told, hey, you got to go out to the countryside, you know exactly what that means. You got to go out, self-criticize, go hang out with the peasants, and get re-educated. All that. Okay, how about another source? Let's go. Let's bring it alive here. It's Thursday. Let's bring it alive. Give me another source. And how I can use it.
Use the following source B.
Source, which one?
Source
Source E.
Source E shows that by the end of the
Yep.
where there was a year exponential drop in profit.
which is going to lead to famine. Okay. All right. So far we got two that were kind of negative in some ways. You know, we can't necessarily. I mean, we can always focus on the problems. We got to throw some positives. All right.
Increased equality.
Yeah, source A about gender equality, change in the household. All right. Did standard of living improve? Do we see a source that maybe showed standard of living improving? That could be source D, right? That shows consumption. I mean, we like it. We like it. That shows our standard of living. I think last week it was expressed that maybe our standard of living has been impacted by higher gas prices. You know, it's like, what's the price of gas now? $2.79. You know, the moment we had that discussion, I found myself out late in the day at Mendota Heights, and mine were like 280 something here in the Grove. Mendota Heights, it was 250 something. I'm like, holy cow. Such the range. It's 289 now in Rochester. So again, I mean, if you're willing to drive around, burn up some gas though. But and that I always thought was ironic. You know, someone says, "Oh, gas is really cheap up to St. Cloud." Yeah, go ahead. How much gas are you going to burn to get up to St. Cloud to get the cheap gas, and how much are you going to burn to come back? For me, it's just one less Diet Coke, I guess. But make a sacrifice like that? Okay, yeah. Or it's just one last, you know, splurge purchase at the checkout. No Reese's peanut butter cups and all that. But standard of living is again showing change, and for the people in China, the standard of living definitely did improve. All right, bring it back. Almost full house now. Almost. All right, so there we go. We see that the daily life has changed, you know, and again, you know, the nice thing about, there we go. We go back to our original claim in the conclusion. That would be a really sweet, nice answer right there. Damn. I think that's pretty good. You see that Mao's policies do have effect on people of China, but it varies. Maybe the intention to create a new proletariat society built on the peasants was his goal, and some of his big plans with the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution might have been, again, nice in theory, but in reality, it was very destructive also to the China that he wanted to create. Any questions on that? Okay, well done. So we should have it done, and you want to make sure you get that submitted, all right? Okay, Mao is going to pass away in 1976. All right. And here I got to share something. Come on. Stop presenting. And that is going to have a big effect on the direction of China, not only for the Chinese people, but also for who is going to run the show. If anything that we have learned, with the death of Stalin, there's going to be a huge impact, and a successor isn't known right away. Even when Lenin died, there was not a successor known right away. So in the case of Mao, when he passes on, it's game on to try to figure out who is going to take over. And in the Communist Party of China, there's always a jockeying for who is going to have a bigger voice. Is it going to be the leftists, those radicals, or is it going to be the rightists, who are sometimes the pragmatists, or sometimes called the capitalist roaders inside the party? Got a little video clip here. You know me, I like to throw a little video clip, and it's going to just show like the immediate impact of his death, and then give a little preview of how China is going to recover. All right, so it's not going to be that long, maybe about 4 minutes. So it's going to be one of our shorter ones. Here we go. Let me mute.
To keep up. People craved the return of a more normal, stable life. After 2 years, the army had to be called in to end the factional fighting, restore order, and help to re-establish the party's authority. And the Red Guard was sent to the countryside to cool off and learn from the peasants. But the Cultural Revolution only ended with Mao himself in 1976.
高山在痛哭，大海泪涛涌，惊天动地的噩耗啊，震撼全球。我国各族人民敬爱的伟大领袖毛泽东同志于1976年9月9日在北京逝世。
In a bid to keep the country together, the propagandists exploited the scenes of mass emotion on Mao's death. Much of the grief was genuine, and many had seen their lives improve beyond measure. Many millions had suffered or died as victims of Mao's rhetoric. All his charisma hadn't delivered the new society he'd promised. After Mao's death, his closest associates, the Gang of Four, were arrested and charged with throwing the country into chaos. His most cherished ideas were abandoned. His successor, Deng Xiaoping, tried to replace ideology with economics. The Chinese were to be mobilized not by dreams of equality, but by money. In the 1980s, political control was as tight as ever, but the slogan from the top was, "To get rich is glorious." One legacy of Mao's reliance on popular action remained. During the Cultural Revolution, he'd allowed the students to challenge authority and feel a new sense of liberation. After Mao, the state always knew that the people, once they'd learned how, might try to challenge the party's authority again. And their fears would be borne out on Tiananmen Square in 1989.
All right. Any quick reactions, thoughts to that? Mao dies. His successor, they said, was Deng Xiaoping, but that would not necessarily. It's not that quick. It's not that quick. It's going to play out. Eventually, Deng Xiaoping, that we could argue, is leader of China by 1981, the sole leader of China by 1981. So you're going to have about 5 years in which it seems like a power struggle is going to happen. So the idea of popular action, the Chinese government was probably correct to know that eventually, as people's standards of living improved, if they had more choice economically, that was naturally also going to spill over into having more choice socially and possibly even politically. And so when they do engage in the four modernizations, or they engage in the modernization programs under Deng Xiaoping, many of them thought and hoped that democracy was going to be a part of it, but it did not. And ultimately plays out in 1989 at Tiananmen Square, where hundreds of Chinese citizens are killed. And really, they're killed around Tiananmen Square, not actually in Tiananmen Square itself, but hundreds do. And I distinctly remember it. I was a senior at the University of Minnesota when Tiananmen Square was happening. Senior at the University of Minnesota when the Berlin Wall opens up. 1989, again, if we look at years, 1989 is a big one in terms of the Cold War. And in fact, or to go back to when Mao passed away, it does have Cold War implications. Relations with the United States has actually been improving by 1976. Economic trade has opened up. China has been placed on the Security Council and replaced Taiwan. So China had been opening up, but the measures of opening up really were instrumented by those people that would be called the pragmatists or the rightists, and not so much about Mao and the leftists in that regards. All right. So quickly here, I just want to throw out here, I got a few thoughts here about that power struggle, because I always think it's important to understand you guys' dynamic is Mao and how does it play out? You know, does his views, his philosophies continue with this power struggle piece? All right. And I do have copies online if you wanted to follow along with that. But Mao by 1976, his health is really terrible. There's no way to sugarcoat in any ways. You can even say by 1970, his health is greatly declining. And people in the inner circle knew that, and they are really putting pressure on him to kind of anoint who is going to take his place. Very much like Lenin. Lenin figuring out, you know, who's your successor going to be, and it's relatively unknown. There is a guy by the name of Hua Guangfang who is eventually going to be projected by Mao as his potential successor there. Factional struggles, I've mentioned that a number of times throughout this past week or throughout this case study, that there are factional struggles between the pragmatists and the radicals. So even inside the Communist Party, that they're not all hardcore, one could argue here. Some are pragmatists. They want a more gradual, moderate approach, where the radicals, let's just stay in this perpetual state of revolution. And that's what Mao had liked, that perpetual state of revolution. But you could see in the video clips that we have been watching that perpetual state of revolution has created a sense of exhaustion and maybe preventing China from really fully modernizing. Now, Mao is the number one guy. The number two guy is Zhou Enlai, and he is a pragmatist. And he's the guy that people in the West somehow always tend to latch onto as, if there's any opportunity to have some type of relationship with China, you go through this guy. or you find the back channels and go with this guy. He dies in he's going to pass away in 1976, and he passed away of cancer, and Mao could not deliver kind of like the eulogy speech, and so Deng Xiaoping, who has been restored and brought back from the countryside, is going to deliver it. He is a pragmatist. He is not liked by that group that's going to be known as the Gang of Four, and they're the ones that are responsible for the Cultural Revolution. With Zhou Enlai's death, he was very popular in China. At Tiananmen Square, there was a popular demonstration that in many ways could be viewed as a repudiation of Mao and the Gang of Four, and it was severely cracked down. And then there was an epic earthquake that had occurred in July of 1976 in China. And if anything that if you remember about studying with China, and in terms of looking at the dynasties and looking at when they rise and fall, you got that dynastic cycle. Here, it was viewed as that something is going to happen. That perhaps Mao's time is coming to an end. And this was July of 1976, and then Mao dies September of 1976. So that is big stuff there. But now that sets up the power struggle. And what you have is the Gang of Four, and it's led by Mao's wife, Jiang. And they are leftists. They claim their ideology is the closest to Mao. It is the most radical. They would like to keep the direction of China in that state of revolution, encouraging through propaganda the going after the opponents and engaging in more self-criticism and the purging, and totally restructuring society. The Gang of Four's influence, though, is only as strong and influential as long as Mao is alive. So when he dies, their power base goes. They have created enough chaos inside the Communist Party that they are looking for, those who oppose them are looking for an opportunity. And plus, they are accused of the Tiananmen incident, which was at Zhou Enlai's funeral and a festival afterwards. And so that is not working in their favor. So then the power struggle happens, and it's big time when you become like time at this point. They refer to it as Man of the Year, now Person of the Year. Deng Xiaoping is going to emerge as, is going to get that title much later though, but the power struggles between the Gang of Four, but also Deng Xiaoping and Hua Guanfang. And Hua Guanfang, after Zhou Enlai died, he was elevated as the number 2. So that was the thought, is if the number 1 goes, Hua Guanfang is going to move in. And Hua Guanfang has an important ally. That's the army. If you got the behind you, PLA, you're going to be, it seems like you're going to be okay. You also got to have some good policies. The Gang of Four rapidly send it from power. They're going to be accused of trying to overthrow Hua Guanfang and his government, and so they're going to be arrested. And almost arrested immediately after the death of Mao. And there'll be a trial, and the trial eventually will occur in 1980. And I do remember hearing about this trial. And all of them are going to be sentenced to prison. Getting them out of the way, now it's really a power struggle between Hua Guanfang and Deng Xiaoping. And Deng Xiaoping, if anything that he has learned from his days of the Civil War and his days of being purged and sent out to the countryside, is just be patient. Be patient, and he will. Because even though Hua Guangfeng has the confidence of the military, so does Deng Xiaoping have the confidence of the military. And he also was very close to Zhou Enlai, who was extremely popular in China. So that's important. And Hua Guangfeng, he has some baggage because early on he had supported the Gang of Four in the Cultural Revolution. Hua Guangfeng is going to have a disaster of an economic policy that occurs. And that allows Deng Xiaoping to emerge as a result of the failed economic policy. Plus, he is accused of also trying to promote the cult of Mao. It's not that people did not revere Mao anymore and his thoughts. They just didn't necessarily publicly bring them up. Since he is such a deity, if you're trying to emulate him, that would be problematic. So he has some things against him, and Deng Xiaoping will eventually emerge as a leader in 1981. He is also known as kind of the mastermind of the Tiananmen Square massacre. So Deng Xiaoping is one that you do not want to, I guess, mess with and cross. Especially by 1981, he is in charge. And he is the one. If we look at China today, one could argue is his policies that are the foundation for the China that it is today. The idea of the modernization policies were shared by Zhou Enlai even as far back in the 1960s. But again, had to be put on hold just for the right time. So again, he's patient. He is patient. All right. So there we go. Power struggle. Now, back in the day, we would have continued with power struggle, or we would have moved on and showed communism in crisis. That was back in the day. We're not going to do that now. All right. But what I do need you to do is let's go to Schoology. Let's go to Schoology. And I had opened up today already the evaluation here of Mao as a totalitarian. So just like we had done before, I want, oops, got excited here. Go back. You have that link there. And so you want to open that up. And it's going to look something like this. And you can work with a historical buddy on it. I've seen some people have started doing it, and that's what we want to do is evaluate Mao in terms of what kind of a totalitarian he was, or authoritarian, and use your activity on the policies, domestic and foreign policies. Think about the sources. Think about anything that we have done in class. And find out which areas that he succeeded in and which areas he fell short, and ultimately determine how far did Mao achieve a totalitarian state. And since he is number 3 of totalitarians or authoritarians we looked at, which one was more? Which one do you think was more of a totalitarian? And that means to be in that status, the one that you think that had the most total control. They're all authoritarians. But to be a totalitarian, it's about total control. All right, so feel free. Let's take about 15 minutes here. So we will come back at about 9:30. So those at home, stay on. 9:30, we'll come back and we'll see where we're at here, okay? Bringing it back here, looking at Mao, those that did respond overall, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, crunching the numbers, and again, I'm not necessarily the greatest number cruncher here, but 7.82%, or 7.82, not percent, but 7.82 is how you rank them on 1 to 10. And again, I think if you get in the 7 or higher, you are in that totalitarian scale in that area. And so when we look at things about Mao, and maybe areas that you thought he kind of struggled, the regime use of the armed forces, you know, I guess I would have to take a look and find out what we mean by the regime's use of the armed forces, because usually the armed forces, if any order is restored in China, it is as a result of the PLA, and someone's making the shots to call the army to come in. The Cultural Revolution comes to an end because of the role of the PLA. But it does seem at times that the PLA is, after the Civil War is done, the role of the PLA is secondary, it seems like. There are times, like in the Korean War, in which the PLA is going to be used. And so that was a game changer in the Korean conflict. In the rectification or the reunification programs of bringing in, the PLA had a very big role there. But exercising central control of, let's see, I'm looking at here, exercising the central control of the economy. You're looking at his programs like the Great Leap Forward program as a show. Will probably fit there. And then the suppression, trade unions are suppressed and the workers may not have succeeded at. In reality, if we look at it, trade unions, all that stuff are state sanctioned. It is after Mao, will you see that there's going to be some incentives being projected to the worker. But that's after Mao. So yeah, that could be a good one there. One party is allowed to exist, you know, or let's go with this one, maintains social and political control through terror, which that's an interesting one there to look at as well. Sent off to the countryside is a pretty strong tool there. But areas we're across the board here, it looks like he's doing quite well at. Well, in most cases, but here's a guy who did have failure, and just about any other leader with the amount of failure he had would have been gone. But somehow he's been given a pass, which could show maybe his level of control. His two big failures, we want to look at his two big failures. Leap Forward and the Great Proletariat Cultural Revolution. Those are, the country is thrown into chaos as a result of both of those, but he's able to survive. He's able to survive. Maybe if we look at some of those smaller policies early on in how he's transforming society, he is having tremendous success there as well. And it could also speak to maybe the level of control he has and the people that are put in place to implement these policies. All right. It's very well possible, like some of these, for the time that we looked at, we may not have a full, complete picture of the level of control here. But looking at this down here, let's go all the way down. Here we go. People are putting Hitler as the most totalitarian. And so if I went back and I looked at the numbers that we had when we evaluated these individuals, it would match up with numbers that the class in general has given for Prime Ministers 2.1, 2.2. Hitler overall is an 8. Stalin, as when I'm crunching numbers, 2.1, 2.2 is 7.96. And right now Mao is 7.82. All right, so it seems to be matching up. Well, no, it doesn't match up right now. Stalin has taken is number 3 in that order. You know, what makes Mao a totalitarian? If we look at longevity, let's talk about longevity. He was leader of the People's Republic of China really for 27 years. And prior to that, he was the primary voice of the Communist Party after the Long March. So very important there. Still revered in China. Still is a cult of Mao. And the country is still communist. Country is still communist. Even though economically we look at it, it's like, dang, you know, that is not communism. Politically, it is still communist. Economically, as Deng Xiaoping said, getting rich is, you know, glorious. And getting rich with Chinese characteristics stick along with it. These are the top 3. These are the top 3 authoritarians. Right? And hopefully, we've learned a little bit about these. Next week, we will do a case study that focuses on one of your choice, and you'll have a list that you will pick from on there, because there's a lot more dynamic authoritarians out there that we have not looked at. So we'll have a little case study on one of those. All right. So tomorrow, again, like I said, we will have an assessment. Open up. Review sheet is there. So please take a look at that. If you're working with someone on that review sheet, you know, just make sure that you're comfortable and you are sharing the information. But when it comes time to taking the test again, let's have some integrity, ICC, all that. Any questions related to that at this point? Any questions that just pop into your head right now about it?
One thing is the test a weekend thing, like Friday through the weekend, or do you want to make it on the hour that we're?
It opens tomorrow. It's given to me specifically what time. Maybe it was up at 9. Can't remember. And closes Sunday at 11:59. All right. So if you start at 11:58, it's going to close on you. I would hold off and send me an email saying, hey, the thing closed on me right away. One, I probably won't respond to it at that point because I'm probably sleeping. And 2, I probably would be irritated anyhow if you started the test at 11:58 p.m. Sunday. All right, there we go. Sorry, that was a little extra. All right, with that, I'm gonna stop talking, give you the last 10 minutes of the class period here. To kind of decompress and get ready for hour 2. Those at home, you can exit. Remember, we do not have a live Google Meet tomorrow.